Imagine standing at the edge of your life, not looking forward, but downward, into the deep waters beneath the surface of your awareness. You thought you were walking freely, didn't you? Thought you'd left the past far behind. But there's a quiet weight around your ankles, not iron, not rope, but something far more binding. Memory, emotion, the kind of pain that doesn't scream anymore, just lingers. You try to move forward, but your soul stutters. Not because you're weak, but because something unseen is pulling you into a pattern too old to remember and too familiar to question. Most people live this way, not in the present, but in the residue of what once was, living scripts they didn't write, playing out endings they never agreed to, and all the while they believe it's fate. Carl Jung warned us, until the unseen becomes seen, it will steer our lives like an invisible puppeteer, and we'll call it destiny. And isn't that what most of us do? Call our pain coincidence. Call our self-doubt humility. Call our emotional numbness strength. But these aren't truths. They're echoes. Leftovers from wounds that never got to finish their story. What if the fear you feel when someone gets too close isn't about them, but about someone else who once hurt you when you were open? What if the walls you build aren't made of wisdom, but of fear wearing the mask of caution? And what if that pit in your stomach, the one that appears when life asks you to take a risk, isn't instinct, but memory, a past version of you still whispering warnings from a place of unprocessed pain? See, time doesn't heal, time buries, and what's buried becomes the architect of your present. These silent architects, the stories you never told, the feelings you never admitted, begin to shape how you love, how you trust, how you dream. They choose your partners, filter your friendships, limit your ambitions, and all the while you think you're making conscious choices. But what if you're not? What if your patterns are the footprints of wounds left unresolved? You're not afraid of love. You're afraid of being left again. You're not uninterested in connection. You just learned early on that connection comes with pain. And so your mind in its brilliance creates an illusion of safety. Keeps you small, keeps you cautious, keeps you from becoming the version of yourself that doesn't need protection anymore. But that version of you, that future self, is already alive inside you, waiting for you to stop repeating and start revealing, waiting for you to ask the right questions, not the safe ones, but the ones that burn a little, the ones that crack open the surface. What am I avoiding? What pain am I still living out as if it's happening now? Where do I shrink, not because I want to, but because once someone taught me that shrinking meant survival? The unconscious doesn't care about time. It doesn't track years, it tracks emotion, which means that until you go back and feel what you tried not to feel, you'll keep reliving it, not in memory, but in behavior, in relationships that feel like déjà vu, in dreams that stop before they bloom, in that strange, constant sense that you're stuck, even when nothing obvious is wrong. You'll feel tired, not from life, but from running. Running from a pain that's not even chasing you anymore, but still owns the house inside your heart. So what do? We slow down. We sit with the discomfort instead of avoiding it. We stop blaming the world for our triggers and start tracing them, not to punish ourselves, but to understand ourselves. Because here's the truth. Your reactions are not random. They are roadmaps. Every time something hurts too much, every time someone's silence feels like rejection, every time you overreact to something small, it's not about now, it's about then. Something inside you is still waiting to be seen, acknowledged, understood, and until it is, it will keep showing up in your life wearing different faces, in different forms, with the same emotional outcome. That's how healing starts, not by fixing, but by seeing, by asking, where did this begin? When was the first time I felt this way? Whose voice is still speaking inside my head when I doubt myself? Who taught me that my needs were too much? That my truth was dangerous? That love must be earned? This is not blame. This is reclamation. Because what you name, you take back power over. What you understand, you can finally release. The greatest myth is that pain fades if we ignore it long enough. But pain ignored becomes identity, and identity shapes reality. Until you believe that your anxiety is just who you are, that your fear is called wisdom, that your sadness is just a personality trait, but it's not. It's not who you are. It's what happened to you. And that distinction changes everything. Because if it happened to you, it means you can change it. If it was created, it can be uncreated. You just have to stop running. When you stop running, you begin to remember not what they did, but who you were before the wound. Before you learned to distrust, before you learned to keep quiet, before you were told that who you are is too much or not enough. That's the version of you that's waiting at the other side of this work. The version who doesn't just survive, but creates. Who doesn't just cope, but connects. Who doesn't just heal, but awakens. And all of this, all of it, starts with one decision: to turn inward, to look at the places that scare you, to write about the memory that still lingers like a shadow, not to relive it, but to release it. And if you're brave enough to do that, to sit in silence with your truth, to feel it without running from it, you'll notice something miraculous. You'll feel lighter, not because the pain disappeared, but because it finally had a voice. And that voice was yours. But healing isn't a one-time thing. It's not a switch you flip. It's a slow unraveling, a remembering. And sometimes it feels like you're getting worse before you get better. That's not failure. That's resurrection. Because when you stop suppressing what aches, the ache finally speaks. And what it says, though painful, is your map home. Home to yourself. But even after all that, after you've felt, faced, forgiven, there's one more threshold, one final challenge. You must stop identifying with your wound. You must stop seeing yourself through the lens of what broke you. Because if you're not careful, pain can become a comfort zone. Familiar, predictable, even when it hurts. There are people who learn to live so long in survival mode, they don't know what peace feels like. People who define themselves by their trauma so completely that they fear who they'll be without it. But you were never meant to live in the ruins. You were meant to rise from them, not forgetting what happened, but no longer needing it to explain who you are. So ask yourself this: if you were no longer driven by guilt, by shame, by fear, who would you become? If no part of your past held your identity hostage, how would you love? How would you speak? How would you stand? That's not just a daydream, that's an invitation. Because that version of you, that unshackled self, isn't fictional. It's just unpracticed. And the only way to meet that version of yourself is to start acting like them now. Not tomorrow, not when life is easier, but here, in this moment, with trembling hands and an open heart. Start making choices from your healed self. Even if the healing isn't complete, speak your truth as if it matters, because it does. Set boundaries like someone who believes they deserve peace, because you do. Stop settling for crumbs when you know you were made for fullness. The version of you that thrives doesn't come after healing. They emerge during it. They are born in the moments you choose yourself, even when it scares you. When you stop performing and start living. When you stop managing people's perceptions and start embodying your truth. And yes, it will feel foreign at first, like wearing someone else's skin. But that's only because you've worn the armor of your past for too long. Peel it off gently, bit by bit. Because your rebirth isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives in quiet decisions, in the silence between old habits and new choices, in the breath you take before speaking the words you've always swallowed, in the courage it takes to say, "This time, I will not abandon myself." You are not here to keep rehearsing pain. You are here to transcend it, not by pretending it never happened, but by proving that even the deepest wounds cannot define your worth, that even with scars, you can build something beautiful. Think of it like this. Every pattern that once kept you stuck wasn't your enemy. It was a teacher. It repeated not to torment you, but to wake you up. And now that you're awake, you no longer need to repeat it. You can thank the wound and still walk away. You can hold the memory and still choose freedom. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of individuation, the process of becoming who you were meant to be. Not despite the shadow, but because of it. When you no longer fear your darkness, you stop being manipulated by it. You stop projecting it. You stop running from it, and instead you integrate it. You say, yes, this is also me. but it does not control me. That's when life begins to reflect something different back to you. New people, new patterns, new emotions. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You stopped expecting the outside to fix what was broken inside. And in doing so, you took your power back. But here's where many people get stuck. After doing the work, after facing the past and breaking the cycle, they don't know how to live as their new self. They still walk carefully, afraid of their own light, still scan the horizon for threats that no longer exist, because safety is unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels unsafe. So you have to train your nervous system to receive peace. You have to teach your body that love doesn't always mean loss, that ease doesn't mean laziness, that joy doesn't always end in pain. And this takes time, patience, presence. You are not just healing old wounds. You are learning a new way of being. And that means you will stumble. You will feel unworthy of the good that shows up. You'll want to sabotage the softness that begins to find you. Don't. Let it in. Even if you tremble, even if you cry. Because those tears are not grief. They are the release of a lifetime of holding it all in. They are the sound of your soul stretching into its true size. And that expansion is the point. You are not meant to remain compressed to fit the shape of your survival story. You are meant to take up space, to speak, to feel, to love, to create from the fullness of your being. So here's your final question. Not what broke you, not what held you back, but this. What will you do with everything you've learned? What will you create now that the chains are gone? Who will you become now that you've seen the truth of your strength? Your past isn't a curse. It's a blueprint. It showed you where the cracks were. Now you get to decide how to rebuild. Not as a fortress to keep others out, but as a home for the self you are finally ready to welcome. There's no applause at the end of this transformation. No audience to cheer you on. Just a quiet moment when you realize you are no longer reacting from the wound. You are responding from wisdom. That is the rebirth. That is freedom. So go. Walk through that door, the one that always stood open, even when you couldn't see it, and carry with you not the weight of your history, but the power of your becoming. The past is done, but your life, the real one, is just beginning. So if you're still here, still listening, still breathing with me in the soft quiet of this moment, then let me tell you something. Not with noise, but with stillness. You made it. Not because everything is perfect now, not because you've figured it all out, but because you finally stopped running. You paused. You turned inward. You dared to feel what most people spend their whole lives avoiding. That's rare. That's sacred. And even if the pain still lingers, even if the healing still feels miles away, there is something different about you now. There's space where there used to be tightness. There's breath where there used to be bracing. There's a quiet knowing beginning to form inside you, whispering, maybe I am not broken after all. Maybe I've just been carrying too much of what was never mine to hold. And maybe now I can begin to let go. You don't need to rush. You don't need to force a breakthrough. Just keep choosing softness. Keep choosing presence. Keep returning to the truth that your healing will not come from erasing your past, but from embracing it gently, tenderly, until even your shadow feels safe to come home. Because you, dear soul, are not what happened to you. You are what you do with it. So rest now. Let the words settle. Let the silence speak. And when you're ready, write the next chapter not from fear, but from freedom. You're not starting over from nothing. You're starting again with everything you've survived. And that is power.